Hello, everybody. Welcome to another art lecture stream with me, Iathisk. Today we're going to be talking about backgrounds. All right. Oh right. First, I agreed to do a perspective review, didn't I? So I'll go ahead and start off. We'll go ahead and start off with that. Perspective review. Okay. Yeah. Dang it. All right. So to review a couple of important aspects of perspective, I'm not going to go over everything, obviously, but I'm going to go over the things that are mainly important when making sure that you're making decisions about what backgrounds that you're going to draw. So, perspective review. Horizon lines. Yeah. Yeah. Stop that. Okay, it's important to remember where your horizon line is on the paper. If you place it up high, that's a down shot. And if you place it down low, it's an up shot. Because when the horizon line is down, you're looking up, and when the horizon line is up, you're looking down. Make enough sense? I hope so. I'm not covering more of that. I have covered it in previous videos, though, so be sure to check those out if you are confused. It's alright. So yeah, placing your horizon line is probably number one most important thing, because I screwed that up a couple of times in my previous videos, but that's okay. That'll be our little secret. Alright, so the horizon line's either, yeah. Alright, next up, the next idea that's super important. This basically answers the question of, like, are you looking up at something, down at something, or straight on at something? Next thing I want to cover is overlap. Overlap. Things that are in front of others we will see the entirety of. Things that are behind it will be obscured or covered. So make sure that you're including not just horizon lines and vanishing points, make sure you include overlap. Yeah, make sure. And vanishing points. And place vanishing points on the page and off the page. To one side or another. Whatever you choose, it's up to you. Single point, 2-point perspective, those are gonna dictate your number of vanishing points. But yeah. Alright. I'm glad some of you are enjoying Minecraft. Alright, let's see here. Yes. Character placement is also super important. Hang them on the horizon line. Hang them on the horizon line together. And what I mean by that is if you have an image and you've got a horizon line, and you've drawn an image that's looking maybe somebody at the shoulders. You're going to draw other characters intersecting that same space with the shoulders to show them in distance. And the idea is that characters of a similar height will all intersect at more or less the same place on the horizon line. And so there'll be, minor differences here and there. But mostly you don't want people up here or down here, because either then they're floating in the sky or they're in a hole. So very important to note your character placement, especially in this is especially relevant to straight on shots. On straight on shots, and I mean, it can be slightly up, it can be slightly down. If your horizon line is intersecting everybody at the top of their heads, you're looking slightly up at everyone. Let's see here. No, that's the opposite, excuse me. If you're placing it at the top of their heads, you're looking slightly down at everyone. And then if you place it near their ankles, you're definitely looking up at them. So keep that in mind. It's a perspective review, and that is placing your characters in perspective, I believe. Yep. So remember those simple things. You can review them in. You can watch my last videos on those to really cover the perspective in review. Okay. Great. So when it comes to backgrounds, we're going to take a very kind of macro to micro kind of approach, because I feel it's rather useful to consider all of the biggest aspects down to the smallest aspects. So we're going to cover the largest aspect of any particular background, which is going to be a biome. You might be familiar with that, with those people that are playing Minecraft. Hey, it's okay. It's okay. I don't mind if people are late. I'm glad you just show up. It's fantastic. We're about to cover biome examples, so I'm going to cover up this space just a little bit. And we're going to look at a couple of different biomes. Alright, and I'll try and be brief about these, but when you're selecting a biome, you're selecting a range of... Excuse me. Yes? Nothing. Alright. We're exploring a range of plant and animal life and natural landscape features. So, right here, we have an example of a temperate deciduous. So, I'm going to write this over here. Temperate. I'm going to need another place for that. Whatever. I know what I'll do. I'll scale that down just a bit. Okay. Temperate deciduous. Temperate deciduous biomes are landmarked by their trees that lose their leaves every year. So, they're common, these are places they're going to be New York, the Northeast United States is what I'm familiar with. They're all over the world, honestly. Typically in the Northern Hemisphere. There you can find stuff like it in the Southern Hemisphere, but most of the temperate deciduous forests are in the Northern Hemisphere. But yeah, so they're classified by trees that lose their leaves every year. So this would be a forest area because it's very, very dense trees. And trees are very useful for firewood and other stuff. So people tend to colonize places like these, or at least start their industry in places like these. All right. Next up is the Coniferous Forest. You're gonna find let's see here, areas like this. Areas like these biomes are all over the place. I'm afraid I've forgotten the examples that I pulled these from since I assembled this so quickly. But an example of this biome is going to be like it's tons and tons and tons of pine trees basically, and they're super cool, and they're important, and they absolutely smother this particular landscape right here. So yeah. Coniferous Forest. And these are all examples, really. This isn't the be all end all. Here's every single, biome on Earth. These are all just examples, really. And you can search these up. What these really are, I hope, for people who watch and review this video, are resources, are words to use, vocabulary to use when you're searching for reference images, right? Because if you want to make sure that your drawings are consistent, self-consistent within the biome, you're gonna need to look up, or rather, I hope you're encouraged to look up various types of biomes and the wildlife that inhabits them. All right, next up we got some woodland. Scale this down a bit. So the difference between woodland and forest is that like the forests are going to be very, very tree dense, and this is still like fairly tree dense. So this is kind of that middle ground area between forest, dense forestry, and like something like a savannah where trees are a little more sparsely placed. And you can see woodlands can be covered by they're like trees and ivy along the ground, stuff like that. Next one we got chaperole. This is a new word for me, actually. I learned this word recently. Chaperole, or call it shrubland. Basically, you can have mountainous areas covered in bush. I think this area is in California, so it's can be very like green and lush, especially in the springtime. Summertime, especially late summertime, it can be wildfire hazard. So when California was on fire, it was mostly this type of area. This type of area that catches fire. All right, so that's chaparral or shrubland. Here we've got a rather beautiful picture of something that can be considered a tundra. I believe this is in Greenland, this particular image. If I can learn my controls correctly. And as you can see in a tundra, it's got a relatively short growing season, so there's not a whole lot of trees, you know, and it can be very rocky, and it can be somewhat tundras can be kind of arid and dry, but definitely more along the cold side. You can see we've got some like floating icebergs or glaciers or whatnot. But yeah, so that's kind of a tundra, and they can be covered in snow. This is probably during like one of the very short growing seasons, the annual melts or whatever. But yeah, so typically not many trees. It's cold. Sometimes they're arid. So they're like a desert, but they're just cold. Alright, next up we got some grassland. We got wild grass kind of dominating. Alright. And you've definitely got some like areas of trees, but so they're kind of some dense areas of trees, but most of the land is covered by like grass and sometimes bushes and sometimes sticks and like wildflowers and other stuff like that. Here we've got an example of a desert. I believe this picture is from Chile. Very dry, very hot. Sparse or no vegetation. It's mostly going to be pure rock formations. So yeah. That's desert. Okay. Here we have a bit of African savanna. You can maybe see the elephants and zebras in the background there. They're tiny, but you can notice them. Most of these pictures I pulled off either like Wikipedia or Google Images or stuff like that, using these for educational purposes. Alright. Savannas areas, you've got grass. And you've got spaced trees. The trees don't typically form like a tight canopy. You'll get some in, that are close-ish to each other. But yeah, unlike a forest can provide a big canopy type of area. Like if I come back here to the temperate deciduous, you walk through this area, and you've got a big area of sunlight directly over this river here. But walking through the forest, it could be entirely shaded because the canopy is so thick. But yeah, so that's kind of in contrast to a savanna where you've got grass and you got spaced trees. Spaced trees. Trees are spaced out. And here we got an example of the tropics, of a tropical type of biome. And tropical biomes often contain the most diverse, they typically contain the most diverse range of species of plant and animal life. Very diverse plant. So if you're ever drawing like a tropics area, try and pick like a specific area. So like the tropics are all like focused around like the equator. So take out a world map and say like, oh, I want to check out the tropical areas of like this area or that area, because they all contain a vast amount of diversity, from continent to continent, from country to country. But yeah, so very diverse. All right, so those are some examples of biomes, and it's important to the biomes are important to remember your background vegetation, your wildlife, your weather patterns, your lighting. Um, yeah, if it's going to be a dense forest with a tight canopy, things are going to be shaded. If they're more open like this, the areas that are open are going to be either river areas or arid areas. Uh, yeah, stuff like that. All very important to consider, especially if you're drawing like wilderness stuff. If you're not drawing wilderness stuff, everything past that is going to be put into some type of city category. So, we're going to lay out some city zones. Let me kind of put this out there first. So like populated or populated or developed land. So you've got your rural land, which is like right next to the wilderness. You've got exurbs. So these can be kind of the same-ish, and exurbs are places where people have to commute for work, so they choose to live outside, and they choose to commute to work. So commuter. Uh, Commuter communities. You've got your rural, you've got your exurbs, you've got your suburbs. Which are in proximity to the city. Which are in proximity to the city and commercial land. Whereas your commuter community, whereas your commuter communities, maybe a little more outward. Those might be a little more industrial. Stop. I really have to turn off notifications sometimes. All right. Yeah, so you've got your suburbs and then you've got your urban areas, which are your dense commercial areas. All right, cool. Here I've got a zoning map from Manitoba, Canada. I believe this is dated 1947. But where you can see all of these, if you're focused on a city area, you can see that there's kind of a layout between. There's a great amount of consideration into what goes where, if you're planning a city. So there are multiple types of areas. So all of these big green areas, those can be considered agricultural areas. So that's where they grow their food. Then you've got these yellow areas, which are single family residences. These blue areas can be multiple family residences. These dark blues are like commercial areas. These gray areas can be industrial kind of areas, I believe, or suburban. Colors are a bit weird here. There's like a dark gray, which is like heavy industrial. So you try to keep your industrials kind of far and your residentials kind of close. And as you develop a city and grow it bigger, you kind of push those industrial areas out further and further. You make new areas for them. But yeah. So yeah, these are nice things to keep in mind. So this is an example that I pulled up of like kind of a residential. This is a residence, kind of like a mixture. It's an apartment complex that seems to be located in kind of this temperate, uh, grasslandish kind of area. So yeah, the wider biome is gonna have those trees and stuff, and then the land the building itself is gonna have these features like around it, hopefully artistically incorporated. It's got all these vines and stuff hanging off of it, which could be pretty cute or cool or something like that. But yeah, so and then your residential areas are going to cover your houses and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, be sure to use these words. Residential, apartment complexes, houses, and so forth. So yeah, residential areas. Here I've got a picture of Times Square. This is a commercial area. A very commercial area. You can see that there's going to be a lot of office spaces in these high rises, and then on the ground floor there's going to be tons of storefronts and lots of branding, lots and lots and lots of branding. You can see, but yeah, it's saving again. Great. But yeah, so the commercial area is gonna be these big city areas, these big gatherings. Um, so they're typically gonna have a number of like landmarks, and you'll want to cover, like, I'll come to this a little bit later, but you'll need to keep in mind, like, if you're drawing a cityscape, you need to draw some of these infrastructural uh, things like streets and street lamps, and all this various lighting. Perhaps if in a city like this, a lot of the electricity and stuff is run underground, but in other areas it will be run on telephone wires or power lines. But yeah, so that's a commercial area. Out further on the edge here, oops, let me make this a bit bigger. Here we've got an example of a heavily industrial area. So it's gonna have tons of like these open kind of structures, these pipes, these cross beams, I beams, railings, all sorts of stuff. Some people love the industrial kind of aesthetic, where things are just kind of like open and you can see like the guts of everything because they don't bother to hide anything because they're usually out on the edges of civilization. But because they need to be like close, right? Because you need your power, your industry, and your stuff. But you don't want it too close. But yeah, so that's an example of an industrial area. This is an example of an institutional area. An institutional covers a lot of things, so let me make this just a bit bigger so it can be seen. This right here is a picture of one of the buildings in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. But yeah. So institutional buildings are going to be government, medical or hospital, or in this example, academic or colleges. Yeah, but these will all have their kind of their own aesthetic. So it's going to be institutional. It's going to be a place where people gather to do some important business that isn't necessarily commercial in nature. Can be more along the lines of this type of stuff. Here is a teeny tiny picture. Should have seen if I could get a bigger one. So here's kind of a spaghetti bowl type of, and I brought this up mainly to cover over some of the infrastructure. Because basically all of this like spaghetti is bridges over bridges. So you've got, your roads, bridges, street lamps, street lighting, power lines. And again, it's all established in a biome of its own, right? Because it's got all of these like trees surrounding it, so we can tell that this is an area that was previously looks like it was a pretty dense forest area, and then the forest had to be cleared to make way for all of these like high-rise buildings and some of these low-rise residential complexes. So yeah, all of those things are important to keep in mind when you're building like a kind of a dense cityscape. So kind of backing away from that, we've got an agricultural area right here. This is an excellent kind of agricultural area because it's flat. The land is arable. Flat, fertile soil. Tend to be rural. You don't want a lot of stuff interfering with your plants growing. You need large open spaces of nature. And you're gonna need bugs and bees and stuff to pollinate all of your cultivated goods. But yeah, growing stuff out in the farmland. And it's gonna be, you can have lands that'll be like somewhat close, but not too close to cities and so forth. In the modern area, we can have farmland way far away because we've got refrigerated trucks and the like. Over here, we got like a cultivated space, parks, recreation, parks and rec. These are cultivated areas. They're gardens. They can be spaced for like monuments. Gardens, monuments. They're very manicured. Very well taken care of. Or alternately, they're not very well taken care of. Sometimes we may have seen an example of a park that is not so well taken care of. But yeah, that can be a thing. And those can all be things that are related to characterizing an environment, which I'll get to here in just a bit. So here we got an example of a rocky shore. But just keep in mind, like, shorelines or waterfronts which are more developed areas that sit kind of on the water, piers and the like. But yeah, keep those in mind. Can be a biome all its own. And then one of the last examples I have here is for tourism. So like here we've got the Louvre in Paris. France is huge on tourism. But yeah, so they've got the Louvre, they've got the Eiffel Tower, they've got Notre Dame, or what's left of it anyway. These are areas where people travel. Commercial, restaurants. All of these attractions that bring people from foreign countries into yours can be counted in tourism. And they've got money, so why not, right? Yeah, okay, cool. So that's covering kind of like the examples of city zones and buildings and so forth. Use these terms when drawing a background for ideas, inspiration on what exactly to draw in your background. All right, moving on from here. Yeah, the city zones and buildings. Vehicles are always important to put into consideration. As you remember, in these city zones, we got a butt ton of vehicles on the infrastructure here. We've even got some agricultural vehicles and so forth in the agricultural areas. In these commercial areas, there are going to be They're going to be taxis and buses and stuff like that. So I have like terminals and so forth. But yeah, keep all that stuff in mind. Uh, Buildings and vehicles. All right. So moving on to interiors, right? So so your interiors are going to be like your rooms of the house. Or say like rooms in the building, because you could be in any number of buildings. If you're in an industrial building or a warehouse, obviously that aesthetic is going to be very different from a bedroom in a residential space, right? So, what's the purpose of the room? What kind of room? Eh, king. What kind of room? Is it a bedroom? Is it a bathroom? Is it a hallway? Is it a kitchen? Is it a living space? Is it a patio? Is it a porch? Is it a foyer? You know, all of these different kinds of rooms and areas. I mean, everything that has been built has been placed into a biome, right? Because the nature existed before humans came along to develop everything. So there will like in smart city design, there will usually be elements of that biome left over. You know, for these big, heavily populated, highly commercialized spaces, like I had the example of Times Square here, right? So if I brought that up, yeah, obviously here there's not a whole lot of plant or animal life left, right? Everything's been paved over, and there aren't any like trees or shrubbery really that I can tell from here. So, yeah, you know, this may not be like the best plan for a city. It's a very old city, and they've kind of like built it as they go, right? So maybe they weren't thinking to include uh, plants from the natural biome beforehand. So more modern cities can have like lots of plants and. But yeah. So yeah. So when you're drawing out a room, what's the purpose of the room? What kind of room is it? If it's in an industrial area, is it a warehouse? Is it an office space? Is it, um, gosh, any number of things? Is it a recreational area? You can have recreation indoors? You can have gyms. You can have all sorts of things, and those will all give you ideas. Like if you so these are probably going to be like the this is where we'll go to props, right? So, how do you know what kind of props to fill a room with? Search the room type. Search for room type on Amazon. Amazon is thoroughly prepared to fill your rooms with crap. So this is a place where you can kind of go shopping, right? So you can go shopping for all of the stuff that you can fill a bedroom with. And what your rooms are filled with are going to be reflective of your character, right? So if you're just kind of like going around Amazon and you can see all of these neat things, all of those neat things can be incorporated into the room that you draw. So and don't overwhelm yourself, but do challenge yourself. So like, yeah. It's gonna be saving again, so I'll talk a little bit longer for about this. So yeah, your primary props, the props that are going to be taking up the most space, are the furniture, the lighting, the decor on the walls. If they hang up pictures or murals or tapestries or reliefs, or if they put up shelves for displaying stuff, trophy cases, whatever. People are different and they're going to place different things in their house. So think about that as like a character thing. But yeah, so there's your stationary props, your bookshelves, your exercise equipment. In the kitchen, there's going to be your fridges and your stove tops and your sinks. All of these things are not things that move. But then you've got the stuff that does move, that are like handheld props, like books, or if you've got a laptop, that can be a thing, or if you've got a fidget cube or whatever. Let your imagination run wild when it comes to props. One of the things is it can be like super overwhelming to think of, like, well, gosh, I could fill a room with anything, so that's gonna freeze me up in paralysis. But just take a moment to calm down. Observe what's around you, what's in your environment. What are 10 things that, like, you could take a picture of, and you could name all of those things, and you could draw all of those things, all of that. So let's move on to characterization of a space. So here's probably the most exciting element of this. I've saved the best for last, so I hope you've hung in there, because this can be really cool. When you're characterizing an environment, you can take part in environmental storytelling. So what do I mean by environmental storytelling? Well, every environment has collected. People leave evidence all over the place, right? So you can think of it as a murder mystery. Whoops. And it doesn't have to be a murder mystery, but you leave behind clues that provoke interest. Right? So, for example, one of those things that you can do to create interest, um, are the what are the items, what are the props that you have chosen, and what is their quality when they are new, which can be an indicator of class, whether someone's poor, middle class, rich, super rich, stuff like that. What is the quality when it's new? Is it super designed, or is it very utilitarian? But yeah, so those can be like class indicators, prop quality, quality when new. Uh, yeah. Because if somebody is like wearing Gucci and they live in a high rise, loft apartment or something like that, they've got money, right? So, that can be a clue that provokes interest, and maybe they've got other things that they've got collections of stuff, like characters leave evidence of who they are in a room. So whenever you're depicting a character that is in their space or their room or their workshop or whatever, there's always going to be stuff around that tells you how the person is. So you got to think backwards, like a backward Sherlock Holmes or stuff like that. So what's in their fridge, for example. What's in their fridge? What's in their trash? Is their trash full of, fresh fruits and veggies that have gone rotten? And is their fridge full of junk food? That can be something that tells you a little bit about a character, right? Is what's on their table? Do they have a whole bunch of like unpaid bills on the table, but they've got letters from their mom or something like that? I don't know. I'm thinking in like old fashioned terms, but these are all things uh, that can be displayed, right? What are the things on display that tell you about who the character you're drawing is? Oh no, it's fine. I got this recorded. I got this recorded. You're okay for being late or anything like that. But yeah, so when it comes to characterizing environments, yeah, your character personalities are going to be manifesting in their environment. The character defects are going to be manifesting in their environments. Like if their trash is overflowing and they don't take it out, there's going to be a whole bunch of evidence of the type of stuff that they throw away, right? Whereas opposed to something that's like a super clean space, right? Have you ever been in like someone who's kept their house ridiculously spotless or something like that? It's almost like no one lives there, and it can be kind of sterile, and it can be kind of a counter indicator that like uh, something might be up with you, because like I don't think you don't leave messes like normal people leave them. Or maybe they're not, or maybe they're not murderers that have skeletons in their closet. Like you don't know. But yeah, so all of those things. Weathering. Weathering. So not everything can remain new all the time, right? It has to get old. So it can be weathered, it can be used, it can be in disrepair, and everything, like if that can be one of those things that you can let me write this down. Juxtaposition. These are things that you can use to juxtapose, right? If they live in a really nice space but have a lot of poor quality tools or poor quality clothes, maybe this is a person who's visiting like a rich friend, or maybe this is someone that has recently come into money or something like that. These are all, everything can be environmental storytelling, right? I covered these biomes earlier, where a person chooses to live. If they choose to live in an area that like was formerly a forest, or is in agriculture, or is in a city, where a person lives tells you a little bit about them, right? It at least tells you where they come from, right? Where they were born, right? Or because maybe they live in the city, but they've got a whole bunch of like country paraphernalia. You know, maybe it's a city kid that wants to grow up to be a farmer. Who knows? You've got all sorts of these interesting little clues that you can figure out and kind of leave around. So yeah, so think about it when you're searching for like props. Uh, Props versus environment, right? If it's someone's bedroom, and they have a whole bunch of like lawn ornaments, like garden gnomes or like the flamingos or whatever, if they have that in their room as opposed to on their porch or their patio or something like that, that's like something interesting. Like that doesn't belong there. Like what's going on? So place things in places where they don't belong. If you have this and that juxtaposition of props versus environment generates interest and therefore says something, or says something, and it can say something definitive, or it can be like, oh, this is nothing. But these are the type of things that can tell you about who a character is, that aren't shown on the character at all. But yeah, so think about that. Yeah, and I've used up my time here, I think. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to issue a challenge. Oh, I haven't done this before. Alright. Challenge. Draw your character. Draw your character in an environment with 10 props. And the props can be anything. The props can be accessories. The props can be the trees in the background. If you draw a character in a park, there's going to be trees. There's going to be lawn. There's going to be benches. There's going to be a playground. Maybe these are all things that can count towards like your prop count, and you can generate interest. If they're in their rooms, like what do they have in their rooms? Do they have a bottle of pain pills? Or like are there going to be stacks of like discarded fast food trash bags or something like that? All of these things can say something about a character in their environment. So choose 10 things. Just 10 things. Don't overwhelm yourself, but do challenge yourself. Put 10 props in their environment. And again, this can be like trees, furniture. They can be like grooming items. Could be a comb, could be a makeup bag, could be a hair dryer, like if they're in the bathroom or something like that. If they're in the kitchen, like draw a toaster or something like that. Appliances, anything. Draw them with a prop. Draw them with like interacting with one prop. Draw 10 props in the background, and these can be like worn accessories, like anything. So pick 10 things to put your character in an environment. That is my challenge to you. All right. I don't have any rewards or anything like that, but if you meet that challenge, I will definitely commend you for meeting that challenge. All right. That's it. I think I'm gonna wrap up this presentation. Thank you very much for everybody for coming. This will be up on YouTube later. For those viewers on YouTube, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, whatever you do the YouTube things. And I will catch you all next week. Again, thank you for coming. Bye-bye to the YouTube viewers. For the rest of you in the stream chat, I will continue to see you.